recently I've been presented with so many different opportunities in life, and I really believe it's because I use the word yes all the time. I use the word yes in the right situation. That's a better way to say it. I used the word yes to this stranger on the subway, and we got into this conversation, and lo and behold, he invited me down to present into this workshop. And this workshop was all about breaking down barriers. So we started off, well, he started off, I played the background for a bit. He started off asking people what barriers do they see in their life. And you know, one guy he said that English was one of his biggest barriers. He felt like when he gets better with English, more doors will open. And every answer that I heard triggered a thought in my head. And I thought, well, yeah, I understand that English could be a barrier, but there's a guy down the street who owns a store. I think he owns like 3 stores, and he can barely speak English. So, but maybe for that person there's a barrier. Then another person he asked, and it was a woman, and she said, I feel like it's a man's world. And then it triggered a thought in my head, like, really? Like, I see it much more differently. But you know, if she feels that's a barrier, then her feelings have to be respected. And you know, it went like that, asking different people. And then I stood up and I talked about my life, and I talked about a barrier that I had to get through. And the barrier was when I decided that I wanted to do something. When I decided that I wanted to do something bigger in my life, it was 2007. It was January 19, 2007. That's when I got released out of jail. And when I got released to nothing. To nothing. I freshly just came back home. My home is Toronto, Canada. I freshly just came back home with my brand new car, which was now confiscated, and I didn't have money to get it out of the pound. I don't have family. I'm not really close with my family and whatnot. So I got released out of jail. I have no home, no money, no nothing. Haven't spoken to my friends in 2 years. I'm like literally screwed. I have barriers upon barriers upon barriers. And unfortunately, at that time in my life, I had a huge drinking problem. I'm kind of embarrassed to say that, but like I said, I opened up my life so people could take the bits and pieces they need and better themselves. So that was a big barrier for me. Now, I didn't really come from a background of people saying nice things, like anything nice. Any encouraging information was usually negative. So someone could tell you where to buy some coke, or where to get a gun, or maybe where to get some weed, or where an easy victim was to rob. But you wouldn't hear positive stuff like where a job was, or, you know, educating yourself, or reading a book, or something like that. And what I want to touch on today is how, if you pay attention to your environment, maybe it could be telling you something. So I ended up like 2 days later. I was still stuck downtown Toronto because I didn't really have any place to call home, so I just stayed in Toronto. And I went into the Toronto Reference Library to drink. I like I said earlier, I had a drinking problem. To drink my beers, and there was this big sign, and it said leaders are readers. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to be a leader. But I didn't know what that meant. You probably giggled to yourself, but I really just didn't know what it meant. Leaders are readers. Leaders are readers. Okay. So I read books. But what kind of books should I read? What kind of books do leaders read? And another word that I kept hearing in people's conversations as I was walking by was motivate. Motivate. You got to motivate yourself. You got to motivate her, him. You got to motivate group. We got to work with motivation. And I was like, motivate. Leaders are readers. Motivate. Okay. So I went to Chapters. The one by Much Music. I think it's on John and Richmond. I went inside there, and the saleswoman comes up to me, and she's like, "Oh, I'm from Chapters. May I help you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm looking for books on motivation." And she's like, "Motivating who?" And I'm like, "Motivate myself?" She's like, yeah, okay. So she brings me upstairs, and she brings me to one of the aisles. The aisles say self-help. And I'm like, self-help? What the hell is that? Self-help? I asked for a book on motivation. What is this? Mary, I'm clueless. I'm opening up a brand new door of like life improvement. She must have noticed that I didn't have a clue of what I was doing. So she turns back and she goes, do you need help finding a specific book? And I was like, yeah. What book do other people get on motivation? And she says, well, a popular one is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And I'll tell you that, I'll tell you this right now. If you don't have that book, you need to get that book. That book is like my Bible, along with like a, well, hold on, I'll continue. So I get that book and I read that book. That book like literally changes my life, changes the way I do everything. And I got this hunger for knowledge, and I started getting book after book, because every time you read a book, it will kind of mention another book. So I just got that book, and then that book would mention another book. And anyways, I got up to, right now I have a library of like 150 books. That's including my audiobooks. And what I started to learn was your brain is only knows how to succeed. That's all your brain knows how to do. And the silly thing about your brain is it thinks that you want to succeed too. So whatever you do, your brain calculates it as successful behavior. So if I smoke a cigarette, or if I'm drinking, or if I'm hanging out with the wrong crowd, my brain thinks that's successful behavior. So it's going to formulate plans for me to get more of that. So as I started to review my life and thought back to all these things I was learning, I thought to myself, holy crap, I'm addicted to losing. I've trained my brain to bring me what I don't want in my life. So I had to do this whole, what would you call, machine wash of my life. Just really get out the dirt. And when I did that, I found that more and more of my barriers, or more and more of the things that I thought were barriers, were easily knocked down, because I started to become more aware of what I was saying, more aware of my environment, and I was making an active step in changing myself. And that's what I really want to focus on, is if you want to break down the barriers in your life, you gotta pay attention to your surroundings, and you have to give meaning to what you're actually saying and action in your life. If you won't be able to get the things that you want by sitting down and wishing for them, or as my friend would say, just pitching great ideas in the mirror. Life is all about action and breaking down barriers, and you break down barriers by adding more great stuff in here. Okay? My name is Kelly Park. I think that's enough today. I'm a monster, and soon you will be too.